Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, June 4th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what we've been up to at the water cooler. The Slash Film Editor-in-Chief, Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor, Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Weekend Editor, Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Senior Writer, Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writers, Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris, Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
So we have the whole team back together for the first time in over a week. I've been away at Disneyland for a few days at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We talked about that on yesterday's podcast, but this is just my way of saying I have not been doing much outside of the planet of Batuu for the last week. So you're not going to hear a lot from me on this podcast, but please, if you want to see some of my adventures in Galaxy's Edge, you can head over to my new YouTube channel. I will link that in the show notes. But Chris, what have you been up to? You've been traveling as well.
Yes, I went to New Orleans for the Overlook Film Festival, which is a horror-centric film festival, and it was a lot of fun. The movies weren't so great. Out of all the films I saw, I probably only think like two were what I would call good, but the experience was good. I had never been there before. It was ungodly humid, and I did not like that part. I feel like if I ever go back, I'll go back like in the fall or even the winter, because that's probably more bearable, because it's so humid there that you become drenched in sweat almost immediately. But it's a interesting place. It's an interesting city. It's very it blends all these cultures. It's very obsessed with death and voodoo and ghosts, and that's all stuff I really like. So I had a good time. I went on a ghost tour that was sponsored by the festival, which was cool. They took us around to various quote unquote haunted places, one of which was actually owned by Nicolas Cage for a while, because he used to live in New Orleans. And he actually has a grave in New Orleans too that he will be buried in someday. There's a pyramid marking his burial place.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You know, Chris, I've heard about this Nicolas Cage house because famously he bought it because it was haunted and would host parties there and eat there, but never spend the night there. He would always go spend a night in a hotel because he didn't want to spend the night in the haunted house.
Right. And he also... Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say it's my favorite Nicolas Cage story. It humanizes him in a very specific way for me.
And they also told us on the ghost tour that he blamed his IRS troubles on the fact that he bought the haunted house. Like he thinks he's cursed now because he bought the house, and that's why he got in trouble with the IRS. But it's probably more likely it's because he didn't pay his taxes. But he blames ghosts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on the whole humidity problem in New Orleans during the summer. I remember going there for a set visit for Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and Maze Runner a few years ago, and that was like in the bayou. It was like even worse, Chris, because you're like in the middle of nowhere, and there's insects you've never seen that look like they're from like Avatar trying to like eat you, and you're like drenched in sweat.
Yeah, but beyond that, it's a fun place because they have they allow open containers on the street. So what people do is, because there's basically a bar everywhere on every corner, so people go into bars, they buy large amounts of alcohol, and then they just stumble out into the streets with that alcohol because they can legally. No one will stop them, and as a result, the entire city is drunk. Everyone from morning to night. I would get up, leave my hotel to go somewhere, and there would be people just staggering around the streets like zombies at like 9 a.m., clearly intoxicated. It was quite a town. I don't know how people live there and don't die constantly, but I guess they get used to it.
Yeah,
this is a podcast for this, but I made some very poor decisions during my trip to New Orleans. That climaxed with me ending up so drunk at 3 a.m. that I was in a porn store with my sister talking about pornography while we were both wasted, and that shouldn't happen. That should never happen to human beings, but it happened.
It's just the place. I think it lends itself to that debauchery that it just inspires you to do very poor things, and you end up regretting them. But that's that.
Yeah, and being on that main street, like if you can get there in the morning, it's almost like you are in a bar after they've turned the lights on, and there's like, vomit in the street, and there's, some piss from some homeless person in the corner. It's very sad.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
Man, you guys
town.
are really selling this place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place. Vomit in the streets, blood everywhere. It's great.
Lots of history, though. Lots of cool things to see in the day, and lots of things to puke on at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of those things. Okay, Jacob, what have you been up to?
I'm also planning to travel. I'm not sure if I can talk about what I'm doing. I'll be able to talk about it shortly after it, but I am going to Walt Disney World for a work trip later this week from Thursday through Saturday. And this is my first time being there since 2011, even though I grew up going there every few years with my family. Once you graduate from college, stop being, feasible for everybody to go every few years. So I'm going back and have a very whirlwind trip of just a few days to try to catch up with the parks and see all the new stuff and see all of my favorites, and generally try to absorb a series of resorts that you honestly really need a week to really properly enjoy in 3 days. So if you have any whirlwind theme park advice, feel free to contact me on Twitter or let me know. I've been planning obsessively. I have a game plan. I'm prepared for it to change. I'm prepared to break my diet and have all the delicious fried churros. But if you have advice, if you ever went down to Disney World for a convention and had limited hours and know where to go, I'm open to hear it. I'm open to change my plans if you have the advice. So let me know. And we'll be talking theme parks again next week as I recount what it's like to visit Disney World in 2019 when you're 30 years old instead of 21.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is go to Pandora.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Rope drop.
Yeah, are you going to go there with, like, in character? You're going to, like, study up on Avatar and, like, go up to the shop goers like I was going up to in Batu and, like, saying all the famous lines that, what is that, I see you?
I think it's I see you. I don't know yet because I'm going solo, and this is the first time I've ever done a theme park trip solo, and I've always wanted to, and I'm very, very excited to be able to pivot as how I want and be able to do the goofy things that my family never wanted to do and go on the rides that my family always scoffed at. So you know what? Maybe I will treat Avatar as an in-world experience. We'll see, Peter.
I wonder how many people actually do. Probably not many. But, Brad, what have you been up to? You've been traveling too.
Yeah, I'm back in Utah hanging out with my girlfriend for a little bit. So just chilling out here in the mountains. And part of that included going up to the actual Sundance Resort, which, even though I've been to Sundance Film Festival 9 years now, I've never actually been to the actual Sundance Resort because that is actually further away from where most of the festival takes place. There are some screenings that happen there, but because it's about a half an hour away from where most of the screenings happen, we usually don't head that way. So my girlfriend took me up there this time because they have a ski lift that goes to the mountains even during the summer so that you can go up and just like check out the views of the Wasatch Mountain range that is around you. And it was awesome. I haven't been up in a mountain range like this, I think, since I was a kid. I went like up in the Rockies with my parents when we went on a trip to Tennessee. So this was really cool. It gets a little scary. Not that the ski lift is unstable, but just because all you're doing is sitting in a chair with your feet dangling over the mountains, and there's just a bar that's in front of you. But you don't even have to have the bar in front of you. You can just lift it up yourself and sit without it, which I wasn't too keen on because sometimes I get nervous with heights. But there were great views. It was really cool to go up there, especially during the summer because there's some snow on the mountains, but it's not fully covered. It's a little bit chilly up there, but during the summer, since people aren't skiing, they have a bunch of mountain bikers up there who are riding down the mountains like on these trails, just like speeding through and everything. So it was pretty cool to get up there and check that out.
Very cool. Okay, let's move on to what we've been reading. I've only been reading a little. I've been reading Disney has produced these a line of Galaxy's Edge inspired books. I've only been reading the comic books. There's these Star Wars Galaxy's Edge comic books. But it's funny because they kind of tell these stories within the world, the planet of Batu, which they have turned into this theme park land. So, like, in the first comic book, you get to learn how Han Solo and Chewbacca captured a baby Sarlacc and delivered that to Doc Ondar. So when you are in Doc Ondar's shop in Star Wars land. In Galaxy's Edge, you can actually see that baby Sarlacc in a tank, and actually it's moving and stuff as an animatronic creature. But it's really cool. I like that they're fleshing out this world, and they're actually, even though, this is a land that we've never seen before in Star Wars, we're getting stories that are, around it and giving it some flavor and some history. On the other hand, it's like everything in Star Wars, like, why has everybody we've known in the Star Wars universe already been on Batuu? Like, we know Darth Vader has been there, Thrawn's been there, now Han Solo and Chewie have been there. Like, it feels like every other planet on, in the original trilogy, it seems like everybody has been there. But I guess that's...
What does a baby Sarlacc look like if it's not inside of, like, a sand dune?
It's really cool because the tank that it is in, Brad, I wish you could go when you're here this weekend, but the tank that it is in, basically you get to see a cross section, so you get to see what the Sarlacc looks like underneath the sand. So you get to see its body, like, breathing and stuff underneath it's kind of like, if you got to see, like, the cross section of, like, what a tree looked like underneath the ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But anyways, that is just nonsense, because this comic book is the kind of thing where, like, it opens up with one of the characters from the land, like, serving one of the characters, the Ronto wrap, which is like one of the food that they sell in this theme park land. So it's ridiculous from start to finish, but I'm enjoying it. Jacob, what have you been reading?
I read a very long article inspired by some recent movie news, and that is American Nightmare, The Ballad of Richard Jewell, written by Marie Brenner and originally published in Vanity Fair in 1998. And I put this on my to-read list because it's been being developed as a film for a long time now, and Clint Eastwood recently signed on to direct it. And 5 years ago, it was going to star Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill reuniting after Wolf of Wall Street, although they're no longer attached as actors. And it's the story of Richard Jewell, who was a security guard at the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta. And he spotted a suspiciously placed backpack, cleared the area, and the bombed backpack went off, and people were injured, but nobody died, thanks to him acting quickly. And for about 24 hours, he was a national hero. Then he spent the next year being accused of being the person who planted the bomb, either to cause violence or to make himself look like a hero. And a combination of, like, incredibly foul play and just rotten tactics from the FBI and very lousy reporting from the local newspapers fed into this entire theory that he was the bad guy and literally destroyed his life to the point where he never recovered from being an accused bomber. And it's a long read. I think it's in my Pocket app, where I read most of my articles, it says a 90-minute read. And I was engrossed by it. And in the film version that was being made at one point, Jonah Hill was going to play Jewell, and DiCaprio was going to play his lawyer, who fights hard to, clear this completely innocent guy's name. And it sounds like really inspired casting. I wish that they were still the ones starring in it. But I can't get excited about a Clint Eastwood movie these days. But American Nightmare, The Ballad of Richard Jewell, is a terrifying article, and just really makes you wonder just the fine line between celebrity and hero and terrorist and criminal, and where all those lines cross, and how easy it is for powerful institutions to completely screw over somebody's life because they didn't double check something or because they doubled down the wrong hunches. It is a really thrilling read, even 21 years after it was published.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been watching. I got to see X-Men Dark Phoenix, but is there an embargo on this? I think there's an embargo.
There is both a social media embargo and a review embargo for the same time tonight at 10 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, HT, you also saw this, and you also cannot say anything.
Yes, but I saw it.
Yeah.
But your review, HT's review, will be up tonight on the site at 10 p.m. Pacific time.
It will.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Please check it out.
By tonight, we mean June 4th, in case you're listening to this on a different day.
Yes.
Yeah, and for those on the East Coast, that will be 1 a.m. Eastern time on tomorrow.
It almost seems like they're burying the review the week of release.
Yeah, it almost does.
Not to say that doesn't comment on our feelings of this film at all, but yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Godzilla, King of Monsters. This is a movie that I missed while I was at Disneyland, but 3 of you have seen it. Or actually, 4 of you have seen it. But Chris already told us his thoughts on that, I believe. Jacob, what did you think?
Godzilla King of the Monsters is a bad movie, and I regret to say that because I was very excited. And I love Michael Dougherty's first 2 films, Trick or Treat and Krampus. But this movie is a mess on a script level. It is a broken, bad screenplay. The storytelling on the page is as bad as any Transformers movie. It's as bad as any blockbuster we make fun of. But it is just, doesn't have the Transformers trash atmosphere for us to be distracted by. So it manages to be dumb and uninteresting and just half-baked in every possible way. And it really bums me out because there's some inspired moments and some inspired ideas. And I'm sure HT and Ben will get into it in a second. But I was just bored during this. I was my favorite Godzilla movies, I guess maybe some context required, is the 1954 Godzilla is a horror movie about the pain of nuclear warfare and the aftermath of radiation. And then Gareth Edwards' Godzilla of 2014, which I really like. It's a horror film where Godzilla doesn't even acknowledge human beings. It's about us being reduced to an animal by something that is so much bigger than us that it can't even comprehend us or acknowledge us. And Shin Godzilla from a few years ago, the most recent Japanese live-action film, is my favorite Godzilla movie because it is very much a Japanese filmmaker using this horror icon of radioactive terror to explore the disaster at Fukushima, to explore Japan's legacy on the world stage. And I kept on waiting for this Godzilla movie to use Godzilla in a way that meant something, in a way that was beyond monsters smash things. And there's some half-baked attempts at global warming commentary, some half-baked attempts at family dynamics. But for all the big loud noise, it is just big loud noise. It's just a monster mash on top of being incredibly stupid. And I was incredibly disappointed. But Ben, you warned me in advance that you did not like this, so I'll let you chime in now.
Yeah, I don't have much to add beyond what you're saying. I really think the biggest failure with this movie is on a script level, and it's it really just it feels like something where, because I know Michael Dougherty is a good storyteller, has the capacity to be a good storyteller, but it just seemed like something where they were really trying to hit a release date and they were forced into a corner and they just shot their first draft. It feels like there's the kernels of good ideas that are in there. And the one positive thing I'll say about the movie is I think there are some visuals in it that are pretty spectacular. Even I almost missed them because my eyes were rolling so far back in my head from the dumbass dialogue that a lot of these characters were delivering. But I think there are some really beautiful tableaus and the colors and just the neons and the streaked colors of the skies, and there's so many yellows and oranges and fire colors and blues, and I think if the movie has any redeeming qualities, it's that that Michael Dougherty knows that occasionally you need to put the camera so far back from the action and stage it as almost like a Renaissance tableau or something, where you can see everything from so far away, and it's you're beholding this sort of glorious, surreal experience of these otherworldly creatures doing battle on such a massive scale. Those were the moments, which are few and far between in the movie, where I didn't completely regret spending the time to watch it. But HT, what did you think about it?
Yeah, this movie looks gorgeous, and I agree with what you're saying about how Michael Dougherty knows how to position his camera, and I think the way that he gives this sort of painterly quality to those big action sequences where you just see, Godzilla shooting a big beam at the sky, lends to the more mythic qualities that he's trying to bring into this movie, but doesn't quite succeed at doing. This movie, I've never been quite that interested in kaiju movies or titles by any means, and this movie did not convince me otherwise. I actually haven't seen the 2014 Godzilla, and I know that a lot of people actually really enjoy that movie. I did see Kong Skull Island, and I enjoyed that for various reasons. This one was just really dull and confusing at that. There were just so many baffling choices and segues that did not really keep me interested. I actually walked out halfway to get popcorn because I was like, I need food for this. But yeah, it's I think that I was interested by some of the elements, like the more mythic elements, like I was talking about, like you were touching on, Ben. But I won't get into because it would probably be spoilery. But I wanted to see some more of that because I thought that was weird and interesting and a little ambitious. But I feel like we didn't see enough of that, or Doherty didn't follow through with it very well.
I think that a touchstone for us to talk about here is that a major character from the first Godzilla movie, the Gareth Edwards 2014 version, dies, and I did not realize his character dies until a long time later when a character's looking at the character on a screen and it says deceased. It's not clear this character died. And another actress is playing twins in different areas of the world, and I did not realize that she was playing twins until I edited our spoiler review by Josh Meyer, and even he said he had to see it twice before he caught it. That's how unclear the storytelling is here.
I noticed that the first time because it's Zhang Ji, and her main character, it has short hair, and then her twin has long hair. And I was like, oh, what happened? Is this a flash forward to suddenly 10 years ahead or something? But no, it's just a twin who never appears or has a line of dialogue again. So it's very odd.
I think the reason for that confusion, Jacob, is because the movie is so bad at establishing its characters in geographic space. Like I mentioned, for the big kaiju fights, Doherty occasionally puts that camera back so you can sort of take everything in and see what's going on. And I feel like for the most part, that stuff is pretty successful. But the character stuff in this, the humans, I mean, people are, suddenly at one location and then inexplicably the next moment at a totally different location. And I get that you don't need to show, I was watching Dr. No for the first time in many, many years. I don't know. Whoa, there's a big thunderstorm going on right now. I'm in Florida, guys. Sorry about that. I was watching Dr. No not too long ago, and that movie just spends so much time showing Sean Connery's Bond, literally doing every single thing where he opens the door and walks all the way across the room and sits down in a chair and opens a book and flips the page. There's they go to the extreme levels of showing every single action of a character. And I understand that in a modern storytelling sense, you don't want to do that with characters. But this movie is just jumping all over the damn place with its characters. And somebody will be outside of a facility and it's raining and they'll be screaming into the wind. And then 2 minutes later, they'll be, on the other side of the world or something. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about Independence Day, which is a very silly movie, the original 1996 Independence Day. And that movie defies logic. It's cheesy. It's ridiculous. But what it does is it has a massive, massive cast of characters, but it justifies all of them. Every single character in Independence Day has an arc. They go somewhere. Their stories intertwine in ways that make sense. And the movie rolls, you realize that all those characters have been on a journey. And I look at this massive cast of really good actors. I'm wondering, why is Thomas Middleditch here? Why is Bradley Whitford here? What is their journey? And you realize that this is just a big cast who does nothing. Nobody has a journey outside maybe 2 or 3 characters. There's all this dead weight dragging down the already mundane human scenes. A second draft should have cut half this cast.
Yeah. I mean, Bradley Whitford is having a lot of fun. So I mean, I'll give him that, but I don't know if that translates into fun for the audience.
Bradley Whitford is the only one who knows what kind of movie he's in, and everyone else does not, except for maybe Ken Watanabe.
Poor Ken Watanabe. He's so wasted. He's such a good actor.
He's so wasted in this movie, you guys.
Can I play devil's advocate here and ask the question that I'm sure some people listening here are thinking, what if I just want some big monster action?
There's more human stuff than monster stuff by a wide, wide margin. All the monster stuff is in the trailers, and I can't get over that. I can't get over how they shot all the impressive, cool monster standoff stuff has been released online, and everything else in this 2-hour movie is human beings walking around an airplane going, "What do we do now? What do we do now?" And that's literally the movie.
I guess that's the problem with a lot of Godzilla movies nowadays, right? Big monster movies. It's hard to give the human characters weight when the monster characters are just so huge and destructive. What can they actually be doing?
I think, this is my controversial opinion, I think the 2014 film did it right, whereas it leaned on the hopelessness of it. The human beings in Godzilla the first one are inconsequential. They cannot fight Godzilla. The movie is literally about them trying to clean up and stay ahead of Godzilla. And even though the characters themselves are maybe a little threadbare and they could have been written with more personality, their struggle, which is survival and just staying ahead of a fight they cannot comprehend, is so much more exciting than how do we team up with Godzilla and make him part of the U.S. military, which is pretty much what Godzilla King of the Monsters is about.
Okay, let's talk about 4DX, because I know Ben saw this in 4DX. Ben, is this the first time you've seen anything in 4DX?
It is the first time I've seen a movie in 4DX. So I saw the trailer for The Meg last year in 4DX because I had to write about it, and it was like some special little event that they were doing to try to promote that movie. It was like a weird thing, but that was my first encounter with 4DX. This is the first time that I've seen an entire movie in 4DX. Not only that, I saw this film in what they're calling 4DX Extreme, which has actually been around for a couple years, but it is where they turn all of the 4DX effects all the way up to the maximum settings. So, the invite that I got to this screening...
Wait. So can I see Godzilla in just normal 4DX? Is there like an option to see 4DX and 4DX Extreme, or is all the screenings 4DX Extreme?
So I asked about this. So at the Regal LA Live, which is in downtown Los Angeles, which is where I saw it, yes, there are basically two different types of screenings. You can see just a traditional 4DX movie, and then for no additional upcharge, you can, if you choose, see it in 4DX Extreme. I'm guessing that it's probably just like one screening per day or something is in Extreme, and if you want to see it, you have to go at a specific time or something along those lines. But yeah, I decided, what the hell? Let's crank this thing to 11 and see what this movie is like. And it was a roller coaster ride beyond belief. I would not call it an enjoyable experience. I mean, I was being hurled around in my seat. I went with my wife, and both of us we spent, I don't know, a quarter of the movie just in audible laughter, and it seemed like a lot of the other theater goers did as well, because out of the periphery, out of the corner of my eye, I could see her just being thrashed in her seat. Like a lot of this movie is monster stuff, and so that's of course where it really kicks up. But the camera, the 4DX effects are also timed to specific camera moves and stuff too, so you'll get a little bit more of a subtle thing, like during shots where the camera is like floating up above the audience or up above the characters, or it sort of like pans to the left, you'll sort of like glide around in your seat a little bit, even for like just small camera moves. But there's also, of course, like the water element where it's just like spraying you, and it's not like a string, like a nozzle of actual water that is spraying you in the face, which is what I frankly expected 4DX Extreme to be. It is really just the same sort of like bursts of like mist, basically. It's not like you're going to get soaked when you go to a movie like this. But yeah, there were like air effects blowing past your ears when people are shooting, machine gun fire and stuff like that. There was like lightning, like strobe light effects and all of that going off in the corners of the theater. At one point there was like smoke, I guess like fog, really, like a fog effect came up when like Godzilla blasted something out of his mouth. So yeah, it was
did you smell anything? Was there any smell effects?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't smell anything. I wonder if I didn't speak with my wife about this. I wonder if she caught anything that I just may have missed. But yeah, the scents were not really that big of a thing. I think the only other thing that she experienced that I did not was I was wearing jeans. So I guess down at your feet at ankle level, she was wearing like a skirt or a dress or something where like the back of her ankles were open, like exposed. And I guess something like brushed past her ankles a couple times during the movie, or maybe it was just like an air blast or some sort of foot related effect was going on down there as well that I just didn't experience didn't feel because I was wearing long pants, and I just missed out on that part. So I was kind of bummed actually that I didn't get like the full experience and experience every single little thing. But I have to say that Jacob and HT, both of you were talking about this movie just being like a little bit boring. I think the 4DX Extreme effects really helped to mask that with this particular movie. I feel like I would have been so bored. I would have watched this entire movie just with a straight face because it's not funny and it's not even really interesting. I would have just been, stone faced the entire way through. But being thrashed around so much in this 4DX Extreme environment at least made it, it kept me awake. And I can say that about it.
Yeah, this is the future of cinema, Ben. It's the future of cinema.
I don't know about that. I really kind of hope that it's not. I do think it is kind of maybe interesting in small doses if you know what you're going into, but I don't know how. Like, it was interesting for me as a novelty, my first time experiencing it. I don't know if I would ever go back and do it again, but I do think it improved my experience watching Godzilla King of the Monsters.
How much do we need to pay Chris to see a movie in 40X?
Well, he was almost going to do it at one point. He was going to drive into New York City.
Geostorm, right?
Yeah, Geostorm. I actually would like to see a horror movie in 40X. I feel like that could be fun if it was done well, which probably it won't be. But like, I feel like using that thing behind your legs and like bursts of air could be cool for like jump scares.
Yeah.
You mean It's Tough to Be a Bug at Disney, the most terrifying film of all time, Peter?
Yes, it is terrifying. And by the way, you did mention the strobe effects, where like strobes in the corners of the room, so you like see it in your peripheral vision. This reminds me, the thing I was going to bring up with X-Men Dark Phoenix, in the last 20 minutes of the movie, in the third act of the movie that I was watching, I guess I can say this because this is not... I'm not embargoed for the experience. I'm only embargoed for the movie. But someone set off the fire alarm in my movie theater in AMC Century City. So it was during a sequence where there's a breakout and this alarm starts going on, and everybody in the theater thinks that the alarm is the alarm that's on, part of the movie. And then it cuts away from that sequence because they're in that sequence for a while and the alarm's still going on and everybody's like looking around like, what is going on? The lights start flashing. So during like the last 20 minutes of the movie, it was just non-stop alarm and lights flashing. And I just received an email in my email box from Fox offering for me to see another press screening, I think tonight to make up for that. But I'm not going to do that. But yeah, that was fun. That has never happened before. Honestly, the thing I was afraid of the most, it's not like this movie is being ruined, but please don't let the movie stop, because I've had that happen where like, an alarm goes off and the movie stops and then they have to evacuate the theater and then like they can't restart the movie at that point. And we were so close to the end of the movie. I was like, please, let's just make it to the end. Make it to the end. I don't want to, see the movie again. So, anyways, okay, let's move on to Always Be My Maybe. This is a movie that both Brad and HT saw. Let's start off with HT. What did you think?
I surprisingly liked this movie a lot. I was a bit wary of it, despite, it being made specifically to cater to me because it's an Asian American rom-com, and it was basically willed into existence by the internet after Ali Wong and Randall Park started talking about doing a rom-com starring themselves. And because of that, I think that was the reason I was worried, because it's just like, oh, it's sort of like something that would be fan servicey and also would be within the realms of like the Netflix algorithm. And yet this was actually a genuinely good and emotionally appealing movie. There's some emotional beats like early on that hit me quite hard, and it gets to the idea of family and just like friendship turning to love really well. It has sort of shades of When Harry Met Sally. Doesn't quite accomplish that as well, but it's a really funny and really fun movie. I was surprised by how funny it was too, because there's just some really raunchy laugh out loud moments that made me laugh out loud. And Ali Wong and Randall Park are great and hilarious in this, as is Keanu Reeves, who makes just the most fabulous cameo this year, maybe in the past decade. It's great. He plays like this very self-serious version of himself, and it's just so satirical and so self-deprecating that you just can't help but love it. And like the movie leans into that as well. So I really liked the part that this movie, that food plays in this movie too, and how it kind of works into the idea that Asian cultures are not a monolith, especially with food playing such an essential part in almost all Asian cultures. It is the closest thing to a universal language that we have with everyone, and I really like that food was like that really pivotal part. So what I'm saying is that I love this movie, and it was really funny. And while I'm excited about how it was incredibly sensitive and authentic towards like the Asian American experience, not just in the main leads, but also the fact that there are barely any white characters who have speaking roles. I think there's one white character with a speaking role, and she plays like a minor like hostess character, and that was really exciting. Even the extras reflect like the Bay Area in which this movie is set, and a lot of them are Asian or diverse in some way, and that was really exciting for me. So even though this is a movie that was made specifically catered to me, it's actually compelling and funny and really sweet and moving rom-com.
Yeah. Brad, what did you think?
Yeah, I also enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It was better than I thought it would be. The trailer made me chuckle a little bit, but I thought, I don't know, like maybe half the jokes kind of fell flat a little bit. But this movie is extremely charming, mostly based on the chemistry between Randall Park and Ali Wong. They're fantastic in the lead roles. The stuff with Keanu Reeves is, seriously, it's an all-time great cameo. He is ruckusly hilarious. Like the movie amps up the laughs so much when he shows up, and Keanu Reeves just fully leans into making fun of himself, and it is just it gets even crazier than you think too. And he's just a total nut in this movie. I loved every minute of it that he was in it. And while I do enjoy this movie a lot, and I had a lot of fun watching it, I still acknowledge that there are a pretty decent amount of shortcomings in this movie, because I feel like it treats its supporting characters rather flippantly and half-assedly tries to tie them into the main story in a way that they're supposed to be part of the main character's lives, but they're not really in any meaningful way. They just feel kind of tacked on. Like in the movie, Randall Park has this hip-hop group that he's part of, and they try to make the band's dynamic part of his life and like introduce a little bit of like friendship drama alongside with the romantic stuff. And it doesn't really work because we don't really get much of a sense of who those characters are. They try to do it in very cheap shortcut ways. And they're played by Charlie Nee and Karen Sony are among them. And I don't know, it just felt like it was just a missed opportunity for me to not only add some comedy in there, but also have a nice extra dynamic between characters. And I kind of felt the same way about the friends that Ali Wong has. Her assistant in the movie, and is she's probably better portrayed than the other supporting characters. But throughout the movie, she's pregnant, and they kind of use it more so as an opportunity to lace jokes about how Ali Wong's kind of I don't know, an inappropriate like potential godmother for and that kind of thing. And even though Michelle Buteau is great at playing this character, I feel like they could have given her so much more to do and have a bigger part of her life. She's kind of the one who is the voice of reason for Ali Wong, and that helped it a little bit. But I don't know. It just I like romantic comedies where the supporting characters are just as memorable as the leads, and I feel like that kind of fell short in this movie. And then sorry, HT, you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I think that while this movie does avoid the pitfalls of the Netflix algorithm, it does somewhat fall victim to a lot of rom-com tropes in which the supporting characters are just there to be supporting characters.
Yeah, and then my other big complaint with it is that, and this is kind of a complaint for all Netflix romantic comedies, is that I feel like this script really needed one more polish and maybe some punch-ups by other seasoned comedians, because obviously Ali Wong is a great comedian in her own right. She has very successful stand-up specials. Randall Park is also hilarious, but I just feel like there needed to be an additional like set of eyes looking at this script and beef it up, because it feels like some of the jokes needed to be workshopped and maybe even more needed to be added in, because it is very funny, like especially when Keanu Reeves shows up, but I feel like sometimes it falls flat a little more often than it should.
Okay, let's move on to Rocketman. Jacob, you saw this film?
Yeah, I saw Rocketman right after seeing Godzilla, so it's a pretty interesting double feature, and I really liked Rocketman. Granted, I am a big fan of Elton John and his music. I think if you pick an Elton John album from the 70s, you're picking up a classic that you just should have in your music collection, and that if you have not listened to Elton John his early years, you should go and do that right now, and hopefully Rocketman itself will have convinced you of that. This is a very, very good movie, and a step above the standard biopic. It's sometimes at war with itself, and I think Dexter Fletcher, the director, can't quite reconcile the two movies at play here at times. Like, there are moments where it outright stumbles into being Walk Hard. It stumbles into being a parody of itself, of biopics. Like, there's literally a scene where Elton John has a big concert, cue montage of newspaper headlines of Elton John is successful. Cut to Elton John years later in a fancy office surrounded by art with someone literally saying to him, "You're so successful, Elton John, now what?" And it's like, oh my God, this is like the worst biopic trope ever. But there are also scenes like where Elton John overdoses on pills and attempts to drown himself in a swimming pool. And as he's drowning underwater, he hallucinates his childhood self at the bottom of the pool and has a duet of Rocketman with his childhood self while he's drowning. And the duet continues as he's rescued and taken to the hospital, and he sings throughout this entire sequence of his suicide attempt in the aftermath. And when the movie embraces being a full-fledged musical and embraces these fantastical elements and embraces the interior of Elton John and trying to put us in his creative mindset and use his songs to really power through these concepts that otherwise could have seemed mawkish, it is genuinely powerful. And Taron Egerton is astonishing here. He is doing all of his own singing. He's doing an incredible performance. I mean, this blows Rami Malek's Freddie Mercury out of the water. I mean, that boggles my mind that that's going to be the movie that makes more money and wins an Oscar. But I wish that more of Rocketman was the full-fledged musical song and dance fantasy and less of the traditional biopic stuff, because it's an okay biopic, but a pretty incredible musical. And there are such incredible moments here. It's an Elton John fan. My biggest complaint is that the only Elton John album that's purely autobiographical, which is Captain Fantastic, the Brown Dirt Cowboy, doesn't get any songs here, even though it is the autobiographical parts of the album are covered extensively in the movie itself. But that's my biggest nitpick, and that's a small nitpick. So go see this movie, and if you like what you hear, man, you just need to listen to some of the best albums of all time if you haven't already. Ben, you like this more than me, right?
I think so, yes. I also was not a fan of the those elements that you're talking about where it's just like so familiar, and it's hard to blame the movie for that, because if they're telling the truth, then what that means is Elton John just lived a typical rock star life. Like, the reason that those tropes exist is because so many people experience the same trajectory. So it's hard to really bash them, but it feels so familiar and like something you've seen a million times. But I totally agree that the best parts of the movie are when it embraces those fantastical elements. And I think Taron Egerton really gives even in the moments that are tropey, I think Taron Egerton sort of elevates it, and you can feel the soul in his performance there. So I think I did come away liking this a little bit more than you did.
Yeah, I wish it had been just more wall-to-wall musical stuff, and I really, really liked Taron Egerton's dynamic with Jamie Bell's Bernie Taupin. And I like to give Bernie Taupin time today, because Bernie Taupin wrote all of Elton John's biggest songs, and they collaborating for 40 years, and the fact that the movie, I wish it doubled down on that friendship, because it's the most effective moment of the movie outside of the songs is those two having conversations and collaborating. But yeah, Rocketman, it's good. It's really good. And if you like Elton John, you'll love it. And if you don't like Elton John, go see it, because you probably do like Elton John, don't realize it yet. But I also watched Game of Thrones: The Last Watch, and I'll be brief on this because Ben talked about it last week. This is the feature-length documentary that HBO released about the making of the last season of the show, and it's very good, and it intentionally sidesteps having big scenes with most of the stars. I mean, Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington get a few moments, but the vast majority of screen time is on like the location manager, an extra who's been in most of the seasons, the stuntman who's promoted to play the Night King, the woman who runs the coffee and snack cart near the set. It is just all these small people just making their living on Game of Thrones. And like, oh, there's a guy he's the head of snow. His job is he runs a crew that like creates the fake snow and applies it to sets. And it's just a documentary. It's a tribute to all the unsung heroes, the below the line film crews who you never talk about, and the blue collar, hardworking, typically Irish people who were just like, yeah, this has been my job for the past 10 years. I'm sad to see it go. And it is just a lovely, lovely thing. Even if you've never seen Game of Thrones, but like really want to see the nuts and bolts of a massive production, it's really worth it. My favorite character was the really harried location manager, who at one point realizes that the extra smoking section is too close to some propane tanks and has to make decisions on a set like, we need to move the extra smoking location so we don't all die. And like little moments like that really sell this as being like, oh, that's stuff that we never talk about. We always talk about what are the showrunners doing, what are the actors doing, and not the location manager making sure that extras don't blow up the propane tanks. And I really love this doc.
Yeah, I love behind-the-scenes docs that show more of that kind of thing. I know the Blu-ray for J.J. Abrams' original Star Trek had a bunch of stuff like that, and also there was a special feature, I think, on John Carter, which had a documentary that was about one day of filming, and they had like something like 30 cameras around set capturing everything from the main actors to the craft service, and I thought that was also well done. I want to see this. Okay, let's talk to Chris. You mentioned you were at the Overlook Film Festival. What were some of the highlights that you saw?
I saw several things. There's only two I really want to highlight. One is The Lodge, which I already saw. I saw that at Sundance, but I liked it so much I wanted to see it again, and I wanted to make sure I was right, basically, the first time I saw it. And I was. I liked it actually even more the second time because without giving too much away, there's stuff that happens that you pick up on more, even more so the second time. And the audience I saw it with at Sundance and the audience I saw it with at the Overlook both really ate it up. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be a pretty, I'm not talking about blockbuster wise or budget or, box office wise, but just in terms of buzz, I have a feeling The Lodge is going to be one of those buzzed about horror films when it comes out this fall. It doesn't have a official release date yet. It's just sometime this fall.
Really briefly, for people who don't know, what is The Lodge?
The Lodge, it stars Riley Keough. It's about these. It's so hard to talk about this because the less you know, the better it is. But it comes down to this: there are these two kids, and their dad is getting remarried to this younger woman played by Riley Keough, and these kids really don't like her. And they don't want their dad to marry her, even though she seems like a really nice person. She's really soft-spoken and she's really kind, and she's trying really hard to, be nice to these kids, but they're just, monsters, like most children are. Children are assholes, so that's a really believable thing. So as fate would have it, it's around Christmas time, and they all go up to this cabin in the woods, or a lodge, if you will. And the father has to leave to take care of work, and a big snowstorm happens. And so the two kids and Riley Keough are essentially trapped together in the lodge. And that's all I'm going to say, because anything more I tell you is going to really spoil how crazy this movie gets.
Okay, what about new movies that you hadn't seen before?
I saw Depraved, which is a new film from Larry Fessenden. I don't know if people will know who he is. He's like a legend in the indie horror scene. He made Wendigo. He made a movie called Habit. And he hasn't directed anything in a while. He's mostly just been producing and appearing in movies. I'll say, like, even if you don't know who he is by name, I guarantee if you've watched like an indie horror movie in the last 10 years, you've seen him, because it's almost like a law that he has to like pop up in some sort of cameo in those movies. But this is his first time directing in a few years, and I was excited just because it's a new movie from him, and it's basically a remake or a new adaptation of Frankenstein. And knowing that going in, I was a little underwhelmed, just because how many more versions of Frankenstein do we need? But I gotta say, this movie is fantastic. I thought there was nothing new to do with Frankenstein, but he actually finds some really interesting things to do. Mostly because, unlike most movies, this is told almost entirely from the monster's point of view, which is actually kind of accurate to the novel. Mary Shelley's novel has a big, section where it's the monster's story, but most of the time when the movies are made, it's told from Dr. Frankenstein's point of view, and this reverses that. And Larry Fessenden actually like sort of puts us in the head of the monster as he's quote unquote born again and learning to talk and learning to be basically a human, and it's really just interesting. And it's not what I would call a scary movie at all. It's not, even though it is horror. It's not trying to really be scary. It's oddly like somber and melancholy. And what really impressed me is, I don't know what the budget was for this movie, but I know it was practically nothing because most Larry Fessenden movies are. But, even though this was probably the lowest budgeted film I saw there, it looked better than almost every other film I saw at the festival, which just proves what a good director Larry Fessenden is and how he can do so much with so little. I don't know if this has an official release date yet. I know IFC picked it up, so they'll probably be releasing it on VOD sometime this year. But I highly recommend you search it out. It's called Depraved.
Chris, is the monster as surprisingly eloquent as the monster is in Frankenstein?
No, he doesn't get as chatty. He does talk, obviously, but he stays a little monosyllabic as the film goes on. I mean, by the end of the film he is talking more, but yeah, he's not as verbose as he is in the book.
I just want to point out that if this piques your interest, there is a really excellent Shout Factory box set of a bunch of Larry Fessenden's directorial work, and it's a really good crash course into why people want to cast him in small roles in all the indie horror movies.
Yeah, that box set is great. He's great. He just makes really interesting, low budget but fascinating films.
Okay, let's move on to Brad. Brad, what have you been watching this week?
So on my flight out to Utah, I watched Instant Family, which is the comedy starring Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne as a couple who decide to adopt kids instead of having some of their own. And I had heard that this movie was actually pretty decent, so I wanted to check it out for myself, and a plane seemed like the perfect time to do that. And this movie is honestly surprisingly really good. It's very funny. The comedy is much edgier than I was anticipating. I was thinking this would be more of a family-friendly comedy, but it's definitely much more intended for adults, which I guess I should expect from Sean Anders and John Morris being the filmmakers behind it. They've definitely done more raunchy comedy in their careers with writing Hot Tub Time Machine and She's Out of My League and We're the Millers, as well as co-directing Horrible Bosses 2. But yeah, I was incredibly impressed by this. It's not only is it very funny, it's also genuinely charming and touching. It gets a little bit like family cheesy at times, but because the story is focused on adopting kids, and it shines a much brighter light on the process of doing that, even if it is still simplified and doesn't necessarily dive into all the complexities that come with that kind of environment and dynamic. It introduces a lot of scenes and concepts and things that you don't necessarily see in movies where you have kids that are adopted and living with a family, and I really appreciated that, and it's very entertaining. So if you get a chance to check it out, I would definitely recommend seeing that. It's available on Blu-ray, DVD, and on demand, and you can rent it and whatnot right now too. I also finally got around to seeing Aladdin, and everyone is right. It's much better than the marketing made it out to be, even though it's still not great or anything groundbreaking, but it is much more enjoyable than I anticipated. I'm not as hot on Will Smith as everybody else seems to be. I feel like he was fine, and sure, some of that comes from comparing him to Robin Williams, but I just feel like he's not super funny in this role. He's very energetic and he's clearly into it, but I didn't think he did anything, special. But yeah, it's a fine remake. I'm not sure that it was begging to be done or needed to be. But there's some cool sequences, and I like what it does with Jasmine as a character. It makes her more important and gives her a lot more to do. And I was mostly satisfied with it. I mean, did you guys end up liking Aladdin?
Yeah, Ben really liked it. I think I fall more in your camp of it's a lot better than you thought it was going to be, but it's still, not quite the original.
Yeah, I don't know if my expectations were so low that I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be, but I would still say it's aggressively mediocre.
That's fair. And that Ben, did you really like it?
I mean, I don't know. Really like it seems strong. I do think that it justified its existence by giving Jasmine more to do. I think ultimately that's the thing that I sort of came away with the most was her increased role and the fact that this movie could be the entry point for these characters for a whole new generation of people. I think it ultimately is worth the headache that it caused to all of us just by existing, but I think it's going to do more net good in the world because it exists. So yeah, I think I ultimately came away liking it, and more than I thought I was going to, certainly. But yeah, I certainly also see how mediocre is probably a good way to still describe it, even with all of that stuff being said.
But by the way, it's crazy. Last night when I went to the AMC Century City, I went to the Disney store in that mall, and last time I had been there just a couple weeks ago, they had like the whole front of that mall was just basically dedicated to Aladdin merchandise for this new film, and now it's like all been replaced by Toy Story 4, so they've already moved on. Like the Disney store has moved on already, which is crazy. I mean, maybe that's more of a comment of how many films Disney has coming out, but Brad, what else have you been watching?
And the other thing I've been watching is my girlfriend convinced me to watch the Great British Baking Show. We watched the most recent season, and it's not that I don't like shows like this, but I usually just don't go out of my way to watch them because they're fun for absolutely, but like I just never feel compelled to like sit down and be like, oh, I need to watch all of this. But the show really is just a lot of fun to watch, and the people competing are so impressive and talented, and so great to see how they come up with these different confectionery things and just the intricate designs and just panicking and trying to figure out how to make these things. So many delicious things, and I also love that this is a competition show where everyone is just really nice to each other. Every now and then the judges have some kind of unkind things to say if the recipes don't turn out as well as they're supposed to. But even then, like, they're still kind of polite about it. And that, like, all of the competitors like really support each other and are friends, and it's just it really is just a fun show to watch to help pass the time. I really liked it. Does anybody else watch this?
Yeah, we've talked about this a bit in past episodes, but the Great British Baking Show is proof that the human race deserves to survive at least a little bit longer. It is so nice and sweet and gentle.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but it is a wonderful show.
The only thing, I don't watch it, but the only thing I know about it is the absurd amount of innuendo that takes place throughout the episodes.
But it's all like PG-13 innuendo, and everybody's having a good laugh, and no one gets hurt.
Yes, that's good.
It's true, and there's very, very, very British humor throughout.
Yeah, and that's available on Netflix?
Yes, it is.
Ben, what have you been watching?
I am in Florida visiting family, and I was at my in-laws' house, and we watched No Country for Old Men on Netflix. My wife had never seen it, and I have not seen it since 2007 when it came out. And man, this movie just is like a crackling piece of cinema. This thing rules. I remember mostly the ending and how disappointed I was with the fact that it just ends. But I didn't remember how much of this movie is just a straight up old school chase film. I was shocked to sort of realize that you're thrown into the action so quickly, and the majority of the movie is just this really tense cat and mouse thriller. And I really came away liking this movie. I mean, I enjoyed it the first time, even though I was sort of let down by what I considered to be an abrupt ending. But I think I don't know if it's just age or what, but I think I've come away with it with an even bigger respect for it now. Has anybody seen this movie recently? What do you guys think about No Country for Old Men? I think this movie won Best Picture, didn't it?
It did. It's a masterpiece. And that ending, I know, was controversial at the time because I know some people who loved it until the ending, but ending with that final line from that actor, and what the final line is, leaves you feeling so helpless in the way, and that's what the story really needs at that point, is that character feels useless to change the violent world around him, and it leaves you feeling helpless and useless to do it to help him in any way to resolve a very bad situation. And it's frustrating until you sit with it for years and you realize it's the only way that movie could have ended.
Yeah, what he said. I don't know.
Awesome.
That ending has never bothered me. I never understood why it bothered people, but maybe that's because at heart I am an old man, and I always have been, and I'm slowly dying. So, but the ending really never bothered me. I always thought it was really cool, but I distinctly remember when I saw it in theaters, when it cut to black, half the audience was like, "What?" But I don't know. It never really bothered me.
Yeah, I think I was just, I wanted it to be, I wanted to see everything. I wanted there to be closure. And this is not a movie, like Jacob said, I guess you just have to sit with it for a little while and really like ponder its themes and what the larger point of the film is. But I think ultimately it's not really a movie about, tying things up with a bow. It's about huge things, huge ideas, the nature of evil and like how we survive in an ugly world and stuff like that. So the ending makes a lot of sense to me now, and I think I was just on like a visceral level, I was just disappointed that it sort of cut to black when I wasn't expecting it the first time. But revisiting it the second time, I think it's really great. So that's No Country for Old Men. It's on Netflix right now, and highly recommend revisiting that or maybe checking it out for the first time if you've never seen it. But the only other thing that I've been watching is the 1951 Alfred Hitchcock movie called Strangers on a Train. This is also on Netflix. And this is a movie about two guys who meet on a train. One of them is a tennis player. The other one is a psychopath. And the psycho seems to know everything about the tennis player, including his romantic situation. He's like the tennis player is like engaged to, or I guess in a relationship with a woman who is not his wife. And the psycho suggests that they should exchange murders because the psycho hates his own father, and he wants the tennis player to kill his father, and he will bump off the tennis player's wife. And because they've never met each other before, this is the perfect murder scenario because each of them are killing strangers, and so nobody will ever be able to trace it back to them. That's the idea there. And so the psycho actually kills the guy's wife, and then the whole rest of the movie is him trying to convince the tennis player to kill his father and sort of complete this deal that the tennis player never actually agreed to in the first place. This guy's just insane. So it's a fun premise.
And I feel like a lot of people probably who are not old enough to go back and watch Alfred Hitchcock movies probably know this premise from Throw Mama from the Train, which is kind of loosely a remake of this film, right?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that because I've actually never seen that movie. So that's
I think I'm correct
cool.
there. Jacob, am I correct?
I've never seen it either.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You are correct, Peter.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know where Ben's going with this, but Strangers on a Train rules. So
Yes,
Ben,
I also want to chime in and say I love Strangers on a Train.
be careful what you say next, Ben.
Well, this movie it's co-written by Raymond Chandler, who is like one of my favorite noir authors. So it has a little bit of that that perfect murder scenario. You sort of feel Chandler's presence, lurking beyond just outside the corners of the frame. But I think for me the movie it drags a little bit until it gets to the conclusion, which I'm going to spoil here because I can't avoid talking about this, and it's one of the most enjoyable things that has happened in a movie to me in a long time in a movie that I've seen, so I have to spoil this. So if you're interested in Strangers on a Train, especially based on Jacob and HC's recommendation, watch it on Netflix and maybe fast forward just a couple minutes in this podcast. But for those of you who have no interest in watching this, I just have to tell you, go to Netflix and watch just the last 20 minutes of the movie, because it ends in an amusement park on a carousel, and one of the two guys that I mentioned in the beginning, the two main characters, are chasing each other. They meet up at this carousel and they jump on, and they're like fighting on a carousel that is crowded with children. There's like mothers standing around, tons of innocent people in this whole thing. The cops converge on this carousel, and one guy fires into it like a live round of ammunition, kills the guy who is operating the the carousel, who then cranks the carousel accidentally as he dies. His body, he shoves the carousel into full-on berserk mode, and this thing just starts spinning out of control, and it's like hurling the carousel pieces, like the horses and all of the creatures and stuff. It's just like breaking down because it's going so fast, and all the while these guys are fighting on top of it. At one point, one of the guys grabs onto one of the poles on the outside of the carousel, and he is like completely elongated. He's like totally stretched out and like grabbing, barely grasping onto this thing as they're spinning around at like 90 miles an hour or something. It is a scene that comes out of nowhere, but it is like one of the most impressive, ridiculous set pieces that I can think of from a movie that was directed in 1951. And man, this thing, I mean, it just builds to this totally ludicrous conclusion that I was sort of lulled to sleep. I mean, not to sleep. I never actually fell asleep while I was watching this movie, but it sort of, there's a long tennis match that happens right before it that sort of like drags out forever, but then it just cuts to this chase scene and that ends with this carousel, and it is incredible. And I was reading a little bit about it, and there's like watch that scene if nothing else, and then go to Wikipedia and read the entry for Strangers on a Train, because there's some pretty incredible stuff in here about like how they actually did this. They used miniatures, but then there was actually a real carousel, and a guy crawled underneath it, and it was actually happening. Like Hitchcock was super nervous about filming it because it was just a guy who worked at a carnival who like offered to crawl underneath the thing and go up into the middle and pull the lever to stop the carousel. And this was like a super dangerous stunt that like wasn't actually done by an actor or professional stuntman. It was just like some guy who worked at the carnival they were shooting at. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff about the making of this movie too. But anybody else want to sound off about Strangers on a Train?
I have
Ben,
a story.
They don't need go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. My story is a good capper to this. I'll let you go first, HT.
Okay. Ben, they don't need to watch this scene because you just described the whole thing.
But seeing it, it's like so insane. I mean, yeah, I certainly did spoil it, but just like the insanity of it, like watching it is a whole nother thing.
What I actually like about that scene is that it's kind of a predecessor for Alfred Hitchcock going really big budget and very grandiose with his set pieces, like in North by Northwest, where he likes to stage the big climactic scenes in the most ludicrous situations. I think North by Northwest happens on Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm. You're correct.
Yes. So it's really fun to see where his beginnings take place. But what I really like about Strangers on a Train is that it's one of Hitchcock's films that have latent displays of homoeroticism that kind of are underpinnings throughout the film. This and Rope, I think, have really interesting sort of not commentary, but just sort of suggestions of homosexuality and how this kind of drives the conflict in a way. There are many great articles talking about this, or great pieces talking about this. But yeah, that's one thing I wanted to point out about Strangers on a Train, which I always really enjoyed when I first saw, and which kind of helps if you're like being lulled by some of the moments. If you read into some of those long, tense scenes, it kind of makes it more interesting in that regard.
Yeah, definitely.
It should be noted that Patricia Highsmith, who wrote the original novel and also wrote, The Talented Mr. Ripley, among other novels, was a lesbian, and all of her movies or all of her books are loaded with homoeroticism, and the film adaptations, where even if they try to hide it, it's all in there, and they can't escape it. And I kind of love that.
I haven't seen this movie since my early teens, and after reliving that ending with your description, I want to actually go back and see it.
You could have relived it at one point at Universal Studios Florida, Peter, at the Alfred Hitchcock The Art of Making Movies exhibit that used to be there. And here's a story that I just want to share because it ties the entire podcast together. Began with theme parks, went to Hitchcock, now we're back at Universal Studios Florida. Alfred Hitchcock The Art of Making Movies was a series of very large rooms dedicated to Alfred Hitchcock and his films. In the final area was a whole bunch of like little set pieces that recreated a bunch of famous sequences from his films, including one corner dedicated to Strangers on a Train, where they had a little piece of the carousel and a clip explaining how they shot the scene, and a Universal Studios like employee who like would let you go in front of a green screen to like rear project yourself into the scene. And when we were done with the exhibit, I turned to my mom and said, "Wow, Alfred Hitchcock seems really cool. I should go watch his movies." And then I became a movie fan. So thank you, theme parks. Thank you, Alfred Hitchcock. And thank you, Strange Dog Train, because I'm here right now because of this movie and Universal Studios Florida.
Wow, it's an origin story moment for you, Jacob.
Yeah, no, I discovered Hitchcock in the same way. I don't quite remember the Strangers on the Train segment of that, but I remember there was like a place in the corner which had the apartment building from
Rear Window.
Rear Window. Yeah, where it actually has like all the windows, like there's projections in all the windows. So you could actually like watch it from like his point of view of like seeing everything that's happening. And I remember they also recreate the scene from Psycho, and all that got me to get into Alfred Hitchcock. And now there's no Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, there's basically the Psycho house on the
It's Shrek 4D now.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah.
So much of both Universal Studios and MGM Studios, which is now Hollywood Studios, got me, like, really enhanced my love of not just movies, but making movies, because all those rides and attractions back then, or most of them, were kind of like, here's how the movies are made. And now it's kind of like, I know Universal always had the tagline, ride the movies, but now it's like, you're in the movie. And it doesn't matter how the movie's made, but, which is kind of sad.
It's the Ready Player One experience, essentially.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, HT, what have you been watching this week?
So this is kind of late coming because the Nausicaä, the Valley of the Wind anniversary event, in which the film returned to theaters for 2 days for its 35th anniversary, passed 2 weeks ago. But I was actually kind of inspired by seeing Godzilla to watch Nausicaä, the Valley of the Wind, because Godzilla King of the Monsters touches on some themes, which again it doesn't quite follow through on, of the Earth sort of not taking vengeance but taking itself back from humanity, and that sort of all-encompassing power of nature and everything. And I was inspired to rewatch Nausicaä, the Valley of the Wind, which I had received a Blu-ray copy of in celebration of its 35th anniversary. Ironically, I came back to my parents' house and I had forgotten to bring that Blu-ray copy. But luckily, back at my parents', I have the entire Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli collection, which I accumulated over the years. So I was able to watch the old DVD, which doesn't have quite the quality of the Blu-ray, but so I put that in, and it has some really fascinatingly old features from back when the Studio Ghibli films were under the Disney umbrella. But now, but I got to rewatch it, and this movie is it's still so good. I think this is one of the Miyazaki films that I haven't quite rewatched as much as my favorites like Spirited Away and Castle in the Sky and Kiki's Delivery Service, but it's so impressive each time, and it really is the purest distillation of Miyazaki's own ideas and beliefs, especially in regards to the environment. And it's him like at full blast. I can't think of the expression, but this is the movie that kicked off Studio Ghibli and basically like helped found the studio, and it's so action packed and the animation is so immaculate, despite being released in 1984, and the filmmaking is just so gorgeous that it really is timeless. It tells the story of a princess who lives in the so-called Valley of the Wind in a far future dystopia, I guess, in the post-apocalyptic world, in which the world has been entirely devastated by conflict, and now these toxic forests have grown out and taken over the world, and humans can't live or breathe near these forests, or the toxins will take over and they will get killed. And these forests are also populated by huge insects that will go on rampages and kill humans as well. But Nausicaä is this warrior princess who believes that the humans and the insects can live in harmony, and yet there is this big rising conflict of another war that will possibly that is trying to rid the world of these forests and these insects. So it's just such an ambitious and unique story, and I really appreciate too how ambitious it was upon rewatch, because I don't think I've seen it since I was in middle school, and it really struck me too. This might be because I'm currently rereading Lord of the Rings through an audiobook. It struck me how influenced this was by J.R.R. Tolkien's vision of fantasy, because it has that high fantasy element. And the Ballad of the Wind especially has sort of Tolkien-esque settings to it, which I found really fascinating. It kind of goes to Miyazaki's own influences in terms of like his movies often take place in sort of European-esque settings, and yet they have a distinctly Japanese sort of mentality to them of peace and harmony, and often of Shinto beliefs as well. So yes, Nausicaä the Valley Wind still rips.
Cool. Brad, what have you been eating this week?
I got my hands on some new cereals. The cereal rush was back recently, and I picked them up and tried them out. There are two new cereals that are being called Fillos, which is a play on the words pillows, because these cereals are filled with filling inside, kind of like the Crave cereals that have been out for a while. One of them is Hershey's Cookies and Cream, and the other one is Pillsbury Cinnamon Rolls. And so the cereal is it's a traditional kind of cereal outside, and then the inside it has a filling inside of it, almost like kind of like a koala yummy, I guess you would say. And they're both really good. The filling inside of them is great. The Hershey's Cookies and Cream one almost tastes like the way that I wish the Oreo cereal tasted like that came out a long time ago, because when I had the Oreo cereal, I thought it was gross. But this is really good. It doesn't really taste like the Hershey's Cookies and Cream candy bar, but like I said, it tastes like an Oreo cereal, so that's really good. And the Pillsbury Cinnamon Roll one is also great too. It's I actually tastes better than the Hostess honey bun cereal. This because of the frosting that they have inside of it, or whatever filling it is, that replicates the cinnamon roll taste. It tastes much more like it than the other one did. So both of those are really good. And then they also came out with two new cereals that are drumstick cereals. Drumsticks being the ice cream cones that you can buy in stores that have a chocolate coating and are filled with ice cream, have a waffle cone. And so they turned two of the flavors into cereals. They have a vanilla cone one and a chocolate mint one. And it has three different pieces in it. It has what are basically Cocoa Puffs, waffle cone pieces, which are basically like Honey Grams. That's the name of that cereal, isn't it?
Honey Grams, I think.
Yeah, isn't that what it is?
Honey Nut Cheerios?
No,
I haven't had cereal in like 5 years, so
it's the square like graham cracker cereal.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think it's Honey Grams. Yeah.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
No.
They're all the same. They all taste the same.
And then it has each of the cereals has different corn puffs that are flavored like the respective ice cream, the mint one and the vanilla one, and both of those are really good too. They don't taste really like the ice cream cone. They just taste like a really good kind of like candy-ish cereal. And so I thought those might taste a little bit kind of cheap, like malto meal cereal, but they're actually really good. And then on the soft drink side of things, Mountain Dew has a new flavor that I stumbled upon. I didn't even know that it was coming out, but it's called Liberty Brew, and it literally has apparently 50 different fruity flavors in it. That's what it says on the label, in honor of the 50 nifty United States. And it's actually really good. I thought with all those flavors, I would be like, ugh, why? What are you doing? But it kind of tastes like almost as if you take like a small handful of gummy bears and put them all in your mouth instead of eating them one flavor at a time. It tastes like that in a soda form. So if that sounds appealing to you, then you might want to try Mountain Dew Liberty Brew.
Brad, did you just say 50 nifty United States?
I did, from 13 original colonies. Shout them, spout them, tell all about them.
This just canceled out my antidepressants. I want to go walk off a bridge. Thanks, Brad.
Oh, no.
Didn't you guys learn 50 Nifty United States?
No! What
I've
does that
never
even
heard of
mean?
that.
Are you serious? So in elementary school, we there was a song that we learned that was called 50 Nifty United States, and the song allows you to list all of the United States in alphabetical order in sing song.
I know what you're talking about, Brad.
Yeah, and I still know it. So Mountain Dew Liberty Brew.
Wait, Brad, you got to sing it.
Oh boy. Okay. 15
Please don't.
United States from 13 original colonies. Shout 'em, spout 'em, tell all about 'em, one by one, till we've given a name to every state in the USA. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming.
Wow.
Jacob, are
Well
you
done.
still depressed over this?
No, you talked me back, Brad. You talked me back. Thank you very much.
Because I don't feel like I could name all those states. This kind of reminds me of the McDonald's menu song. Like, there's no real, like, melody there. It's just, like, you naming off states.
Yeah, it's just you're listing it, and it's vaguely in sing-song. It's nowhere near as clever as the Animaniacs song where Yakko lists the countries of the world.
Yeah.
The only listing song I know is the Poke Rap from Pokemon.
Okay, HT, we need the poker rap now.
No.
No. Oh man. Okay, so and then the last new soft drink I tried is that there's a new dark berry Dr. Pepper that's been released in conjunction with Spider-Man: Far From Home. It's supposed to like represent Mysterio, and I wasn't expecting it to be that good because I don't like berry flavors traditionally, but it's actually pretty tasty. It doesn't taste like medicine, which a lot of artificial berry flavors do. So yeah, that's actually really good. If you happen to see that at a gas station or store, pick that up because it tastes pretty good.
Yeah. I've been busy eating all like otherworldly foods at Galaxy's Edge. Again, I'll put the link to the video in the show notes if you want to see that. But let's move on to our last segment, what we've been playing. As you know, I'm not usually a video gamer. I have not really owned a console since maybe GameCube, I guess. And I barely own that. But I talked 2 weeks ago about playing Oculus Quest. I did that Vader Immortal experience, and I tried out Beat Saber over a friend's house. And Oculus Quest went on sale, and it was sold out everywhere. It's actually almost impossible to get. And I had the screen for Best Buy on my computer, and every day I just like refresh it once. And a Best Buy like in Torrance, which is kind of far from here, somehow got a return or something. And I think it was a combination of me wanting to get this for fitness, which I'll talk about in a second, and also like this is a thing that everybody like that's sold out everywhere, and it's available to me to buy online and go pick it up. I like Instabuyed it, which I know is a heavy purchase for an Instabuy, but my thought was if I bought it and I didn't like it, I could return it, right? So we drove to Torrance, we picked it up, and what my idea here is I want to get some exercise. I do some walking every day. I've been losing weight. As you know, I've lost like 50 pounds now, and I'm not comfortable enough in my own skin to be jogging down the street yet. So I like doing things inside. I like doing treadmills and stuff like that. And Beat Saber is this game. It's a music game where you have two like lightsabers, and you're basically hitting these objects that are coming at you, these boxes that are coming towards you in rhythm to the music. And basically, it was a system seller for me to buy this. And Oculus Quest is awesome, by the way. It is a VR headset that everything is built into the headset. So that means you don't have to own a console. You don't have to own a whole PC rig. And you are not tethered by any wires of any kind. You basically go, like, I went to my living room and drew an outline of where the area where there was no obstructions, no, nothing I could bump into, like couches and stuff like that. And basically it creates the VR environment where you can walk within that environment in that drawn out space, which is pretty cool. And so I've been playing this a lot. I've my dog's like watching me with in disbelief, being like, "What the heck is he doing?" Throwing my hands in the air and stuff like that. I also got a game called Super Hut. Has anybody else here gotten into VR?
I've played a little bit of VR, but I've never owned a console. But I can vouch for Super Hot. The non-VR version of that's great.
Oh, there is a non-VR version. Wow.
Yeah, they adapted it for VR, and I believe it's changed. Super Hot VR is different than console and PC VR. But the actual one I play on my computer is a really, really cool game. So I'm really curious to hear you talk about the VR version.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. You are first person, and it's basically like you are living within the idea of Matrix bullet time. So you are in these scenarios where you're given guns and all sorts of things, and you are trying to stop these bad guys that are either robbing a place or whatnot. It's very simplistic, very minimalistic look. It's all white and red. It's two-tone, and people don't move unless you move. So time stops when you freeze. So basically, you're able to do these amazing things where you're able to like punch a guy and then he'll throw up his like the gun that was in his hand. You're able to like grab it, and while you're grabbing it, turn and shoot the guy to your left. And then, do you know what I mean? Like, you're able to do these like amazing bullet time John Wick style. It makes you feel like such a badass. And I don't know. I love this game so much. I've gotten up to a point where you get like some kind of superpower, which I'm not going to go into here, but the game advances in interesting ways. And I can tell you, I've been playing this while I've been home, for hour-long periods, and my watch tells me I've burned hundreds of calories, and I am just left, because I'm out of shape, left like, soaking wet in sweat and having to go take a shower. I think this is actually a pretty cool way to burn some calories and to get into shape. Last week before I went to Galaxy's Edge, I had lost more weight than I had in a couple months in that week that I had this. But now, I went to Galaxy's Edge, so I gained 6 pounds. So there you go. But I am enjoying Oculus Quest, and as someone who doesn't play games, I can definitely see, like, there's even like experiences that you can do. Like, they have built in, like, there's an experience where you like just play with this like robot, and like all these like cool, it just makes you smile. Like, the things that you can do in this virtual world, it looks so good, and I am just having a blast with my Oculus Quest. So
I think the future of VR for me, Peter, when it comes to experience like this, is horror games. The horror games I played for VR that have been well done have been incredible, because even a jump scare that would not work in a movie kills in VR. So if you get a chance, try out some horror experiences, because they're often really incredible.
Oh, even in Super Hot, like there's times where you turn around and you don't realize there's a guy behind you with a gun in your face, and actually having that gun like in your face, it is freaking scary, guys. like I've jumped. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, Jake,
how much are the games for Oculus Quest?
How much are the games? The range, I think there's some that are free. There's some that are like $5, some 10, and I think they go up to like 25. So it really depends on what you're trying to buy. Like, some of the more licensed stuff, I think like Creed, I didn't buy it, but it's like 25. But
is it worth it? Because it costs $400, right?
Yeah, it costs $400. Well, that really depends, Brad. Is it gonna be something you're gonna play, or is it gonna be something that you're gonna play once and put it down? For me, I've been very interested in keep on doing it, and also there's it's really cool that I have a huge projection screen TV in my living room. Like, it's like 150 inches. It like takes up an entire wall. But if I did not have that, there's a feature that's for free in here that you can watch movies, or you can watch your YouTube like you're sitting in an IMAX theater, and it like really feels and look like the scope and the the size of the screen, it feels like, even if you're sitting on your couch, it feels like you're like in a movie theater getting that experience. So there's even like stuff like that I feel like is beyond just playing games that could benefit people. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, VR is still in its early stages here, and who knows like how many developers are going to make things for this. I know that I know, Brad, you played Vader Immortal, and I want to play more chapters of that. So for that alone, I was interested, and now with the fitness aspect of it, I think I'm in. I'm not returning this. So, and Vader Immortal, so you know that the first chapter is $10, and that I think is like an hour-long experience. So if that gives you any indication, I think each additional chapter will be like $10 or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Jacob, what have you been playing?
I finally got my long gestating Star Wars RPG game to the table. We're doing a 6-session game. No matter what happens, our game reaches the climax after 6 games. And we're using Fantasy Flight Games as Star Wars RPG. I'm actually blending 2 of their books, Edge of the Empire, where people play as criminals, and Age of Rebellion, where people play as rebels. And the basic gist is that what I do when I create RPGs, when I'm running the game, is I don't follow modules, I don't follow pre-written storylines. I create a massive Word doc full of possible events, a massive cast of characters who my players could possibly meet, and a bunch of contingencies for things that could happen if they choose to do something. So the idea being that to paraphrase a popular game running quote, I play to see what happens. I don't play to see them fulfill a pre-written story. I don't play to watch the players follow a specific road. I play to watch them tell a story and me have to react to it. And so I'm as surprised as the players are, and it forces everybody to improvise and be on our feet. And so many amazing things like happen when you play like this, because people who create the characters in isolation, it turns out that they share something in common that neither of them saw coming. So I can bring that into the story. So what was just like someone saying, "This would be cool if I do this," ends up being a plot point. Or there could be situations where, like in the first game, the setup was a group of rebel soldiers and a group of criminals and bounty hunters are all in the same jail cell on the planet, and they have to find a way to escape. And I'd written down a bunch of ways, like if they escape this way, maybe this will happen. Escape this way, this could happen. And so I was kind of like just following along, never suggesting they do something, waiting for them to respond and make suggestions so I could react to it and give them stories so that I feel like they're driving it. And they escape in a spacecraft, more or less. And I have my notes. Oh, they're going to go land in the city, in the streets, and go find somebody to help them out. And then one player asks me, "What do we see looking around?" So I describe the city. I describe a bunch of like skyscrapers. Say, "Oh, there's even a fancy hotel." And one of the players says, "We're driving for the hotel." And I had made up the hotel on the spot. This is not in my notes. So I had to now improvise a set piece where they go try to dock at this intergalactic hotel. And they rolled very poorly, end up crashing into the hotel, and a massive gunfight breaks out. People are falling outside the building and falling into balconies. And afterward, all the players are like, "Man, Jake, I can't believe you planned that set piece." And I said, "I didn't. I didn't make it up because you guys didn't follow anything I'd written down in advance." And for me, that is the fun of RPGs, is that everybody feels like the story is happening organically when it is totally not, when they are telling as much as I am. And everybody was really excited, and we're going to play again hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And man, like if you play RPGs and like follow pre-written adventures, that's totally fine. But I really recommend trying it like this sometime, where everybody goes in with no expectations and no story and see how the story evolves, because it's so gratifying.
Very cool. Brad, you've been playing something?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a picnic thing on Sunday with my girlfriend and some of her family who lives here, and one of her friends brought this game that is called Kub, which is a Swedish word, and it's a yard game that I had never played before, or even seen before. But basically, the setup is it's kind of like bowling mixed with horseshoes in a way, but it's all of these like different wood pieces. There's a bunch of basically wooden blocks that are a little bit taller than they are wide. You set them up in a line opposite from each other. So there are 2 lines, and that establishes the field. And then you have these 6 wooden batons that you have to throw across from behind your own line of wooden blocks to try and knock the other ones down. And that's simple enough. But then what happens is when you knock down one of the other team's wooden blocks, then they grab it and they have to throw it across the field. And there's this like castle block that sits in the center, and you have to toss it to add to your own lineup of blocks that you have to knock down, in addition to the line that's behind it. So, and the catch there is that the block that you throw, wherever it lands, if you don't knock that block down in the middle of the field, then the opposing team gets to throw their batons from that line, which is then likely much closer to the blocks that they have to knock down. It might be a little bit hard to visualize, so if you need to look it up, it's spelled Kubb. It's really fun. As somebody who has kind of gotten sick of cornhole, which is the common game played at picnics and outdoor parties and stuff like that, this was a really fun alternative to play. It allows more people to play since you have 6 wooden batons that you're throwing at the blocks, and it was a lot of fun. I really liked it.
That brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, Peter.
Jacob, we're already over an hour and a half. I'm not sure we have time for the book today.
Well, I think you should cut something else, because I have in front of me Louis A. Safey and his gargantuan book of insult, defense, and effrontery. And I've opened it up to the cream puffs section.
What is
Cream,
the cream, like? Is it talking about the food, or is that a derogatory word for?
I was initially worried that I'd opened it up to the gay bashing section, but it turns out that cream puff, in the parlance of Louis A. Safey, is a weak-willed person, which we all are, as we all know. So I need to go through this book now. Peter, you're the kind of guy who falls for everything and stands for nothing.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah, exactly. Brad, his motto is, "It isn't who you know, but who you yes."
Yeah, that's on my family crest.
Chris, he's a man of firm convictions. It manifests itself as soon as he knows what anyone else thinks on a given subject.
I couldn't even follow that, but all right.
I think he's saying that you're following other people.
Yeah. HT, she's the type of person who can make coffee nervous.
Oh.
And that Ben Pearson, you can break him easier than a biscuit.
Famously snappable. That's the whole Pearson plan.
I feel like when he was writing this chapter, he was drinking a coffee and eating biscuits.
You seem very hungry.